Oh, and just like that, we have restarted. Oh, okay, let me pull up. A MAGA Bible thumper caught in a porn scandal. Your supervisor can now try to proselytize you. Oh, and y'all still upset about that Norman interview. So let's talk about it. Welcome to The Church, the Court, and the Culture, a podcast that looks at religion, race, and the law and their intersection in American society. I'm your host, Brooke Gurley. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to this podcast. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Substack, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow me, and please be sure to do so on social media. I'm on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and my handle is at Paluki's World, which is on the screen. I think I'm that everywhere except TikTok. TikTok, I may just be Paluki, but please be sure to subscribe. All right, so as we do on every episode, I want to start with the church. And so this one, I actually could put this in culture, could even put this in the court because there's a lot going on here. But it is the case of the Oklahoma superintendent, Ryan Walters, who is caught up in a pornographic or porn scandal. There have been allegations, so these are all just allegations. Nothing's been proven. He vehemently denies this. But he was accused of watching pornographic images during a board meeting. There's so many things wrong about this, right? There's just like, why are you watching this? And why are you watching it at work? And why are you watching it at work during a board meeting? There's that. But what's particularly interesting and why I decided to put this in the segment of the church is that Ryan Walters had already come into sort of a scandal last year when he issued a memo saying that there would be the Christian Bible taught in all Oklahoma schools, including the 10 Commandments. He said, quote, that every teacher, every classroom in the state will have a Bible in the classroom and will be teaching from the Bible in the classroom. And if they did not do so, they ran the risk of being terminated. Now, in conjunction with this mandate, which automatically you're thinking, hey, wait, isn't there some like the separation between church and state? Isn't there a First Amendment? Well, Walters argues that the idea of separation between the church and state is a liberal conspiracy or myth, I think is how he puts it. So he's already kind of have a particular agenda where he's trying to put not just any kind of faith, but particularly the Christian faith within the Oklahoma schools. And he did so, I guess, after being inspired by what happened in Louisiana, where they also mandated the Bible be taught in schools. What's also particularly interesting, alarming about what Walters did is that when he said that there should be Bibles, I think he wanted to order like 55,000 Bibles for the school, he welcomed bids, right? So if you have a bidding process, it should be pretty broad, but even this was suspect because they had the particular requirements, and they were these. The Bible must be the King James Version of the Bible, which has its own history and its own issues. It has to have the Old Testament and the New Testament. It has to, and this is the part where it's kind of like, where are we doing here? So there's this indoctrination for sure. It has to include a copy of the Pledge of Allegiance, the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. And it had to be bound in leather or leather-like material. Now you may say, okay, well, he wants a particular Bible, whatever. I mean, if you accept the fact that the Bible should be in the schools. But what is interesting about these requirements is that there were really only two Bibles that fit that description, and both Bibles connected to Donald Trump. Either one was endorsed by him, so he received money, or it was the Donald Trump Bible. You remember that Bible that had all these conflation between Americanism and the Bible in the text, or what I think a few episodes back where the scholar said that Americanism is its own religion. So he wants the American Bible essentially in the schools being taught. And as you can imagine, there was an uproar because it was seen as this clear violation of the First Amendment. And there's also this issue with the bidding process. So there were many things that were questionable brought up against this. But what I think is particularly interesting and why I put it in the church segment is that, again, it points to the hypocrisy that is seen within the church, within Christianity, where you have this man who is, I said Bible thumper in the beginning, but he's saying, no, I want everybody to know the morals, the principles, the 10 Commandments, all of this. I want you to see it as a part of patriotism, because that's why you have these founding documents with the American Bible. So there's this sense that you believe in these conservative values, but you're watching porn at work during a board meeting. It's like, wait, this does not comport. Of course, again, allegedly he's doing these things. He denies this. I will say that again. He denies it, says this is just a political attack. And maybe it is. But if it is not, right, if it in fact is true, then it just speaks to the hypocrisy and why I think it's so hard for people to take the church, Christianity, the church at large seriously, because they see it more so as a way to control people, as a tool for power, rather than sort of these sincerely held beliefs that you're just trying to share with someone. Like, so you're trying to help them improve. It seems like there's something else at stake. And quite honestly, when I look at the fact that this man allegedly was watching porn during the board meeting, it would seem to suggest that there's something else at play. And so I bring that up because, again, I think it's a reminder as for us in the church. And again, I did say, though, before that, I don't think that we're serving the same God. But still, there are those who are naming the name of Christ. And I'm not saying we have to be perfect and that everything has to be perfect and we won't have flaws. But to be actively involved in something, and I don't know if Walters is, but to enforce a particular view, to sort of want to jam it down people's throats while you're not trying to actually live it out yourself, is doing more harm to the faith than any other legislation that you think is in play. That right there, if what Walters did was true, that is more harmful than any kind of legislation, any kind of woke ideology that he thinks is tearing apart the faith. Let me know your thoughts. Maybe you think, no, I think these other legislations are more harmful. I disagree with you on that. Or maybe you agree and say, yes, the hypocrisy of the church is harming the church more so than any outside force. Leave a comment. Let me know. I would love to know your thoughts. All right. So now that that's the church and its hypocrisy, and another example, in my opinion, again, if these allegations are true, of the hypocrisy, I want to turn to the court. And this is not a particular court case that has been filed or is on its way to the United States Supreme Court, but it is something that I see as a legal issue and definitely has the potential to become a court case. And I would be surprised if no one filed anything. I think this is going to become a court case. But the Trump administration issued a memo last week saying that supervisors within the federal sector can now proselytize, which means that they can try to advocate their religious views onto their coworkers or to their subordinates. So if you're a supervisor, you can do it, or if you're just amongst colleagues, you can try to persuade them. And that's what it said. You can try to actually persuade them to your faith. Now, whereas this is sort of trying to present itself as a pluralistic policy, anyone can do it. What I noticed when I read the memo is that it was very Christian, Judeo-Christian centered, right? All the examples were Judeo-Christian examples. So for example, it says that you can have religious symbols displayed on your desk, like a Bible, like a cross, like the Star of David. Those are the examples you see over and over. It's the cross, it's the Bible, it's the Star of David. What you don't see are things like the pentagram, right? You don't see the crescent moon. Like, you don't see these other faiths or any kind of not as well known a Buddha. You don't see all of you don't see that as examples over and over. It's always symbols related to Judeo-Christian beliefs. And I think that is not happenstance, but that is an intentional thing, because that's really what this policy is about. It's about allowing evangelicals, particularly white evangelicals, to just sort of force, like we see with Walters, a particular religious perspective on other people, but do it under the guise of, no, this is just me exercising my faith. But when in reality, there's something else at stake. And then there was another part there that, and this is where I think you're going to definitely have a lawsuit arise, because it says you can try to persuade people, but if they're not, if they ask you to stop, then you should stop. Particularly what it says is, during a break, an employee may engage another in polite discussion of why his faith is correct and why the non-adherent should rethink his religious beliefs. However, if the non-adherent requests such attempts to stop, the employee should honor that request. There's not actually a requirement within the memo that the employee must honor that request. And so then I can see clearly, I can anticipate this line between what is harassment, even though the memo says you shouldn't harass, but what is harassment? You may call it harassment. The religious adherent may say, no, I am just simply exercising my ability to try to persuade other people. And again, while the memo says that the supervisors, one, should not be disciplined or retaliated against because they don't adhere to their supervisor's position or don't go to the Easter program that was mentioned as an example in there. The reality is that people will likely, because in employment law, you see that the people in leadership are not always the most qualified and not always the most professional. How do I say this nicely? They're just not the best leaders, right? They don't know what they're doing. And so they act out of personal reasons. And so they may retaliate because you don't like their faith and they may find you hostile. As a result, I just anticipate that there will be lawsuits filed and that this memo would be the basis of that lawsuit. I could be wrong. I doubt it. I think people are definitely filing lawsuits against this administration because they have engaged in problematic policies. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think that this is actually a good thing? And to some extent, it kind of makes sense. It's like, well, yeah, I can talk to anybody out of work anyway, because that's what these things are permitted, as long as it's not during work hours. So I just kind of question, why do you need a memo saying things like this? Because technically that should have been the case anyway. But maybe I'm missing something. If so, please, I would love to know your thoughts. Leave a comment either in this podcast or Substack, or like I said, you can hit me up online to let me know. Now, finally, we are at the culture. Let me tell you, y'all are still hot, and I'm hot too, about that Norman and Isaac Curry interview. People are still upset about it, and people are still processing through. And even me, I'm still processing through all of what was said, because it was very problematic. And I think, and I responded to someone else's post about how Norman essentially has a monopoly on the Christian or gospel sound. And I agreed, and I said, yes, and he was doing it in a way that presents itself as collaboration, right? Like, I just want to collaborate with people. I'm not out here trying to, I don't know why people are mad at me, but it's like, no. And I think I said this last episode, if you are inevitable, then you essentially have a monopoly. And so when people, it's not that people are collaborating with you, it's that you're forcing them to work with you, and they sense that and they feel that, and there's resentment there. And you know that, again, because you're trying to make yourself inevitable. So I think there's just a lot of processing going through, and people have posted videos outlining the history of gospel music, the power of it, why it's not dead, why people still love choirs and all of that. And I've seen recently today, someone had a prophecy about CCM and gospel music as a business is being run by non-godly forces. I don't want to misquote, but essentially that the powers that run the business are not godly. Not the people in it necessarily, the singers, but the business of gospel music actually is very separate from God, as according to this prophecy. So again, there's a lot going on in the culture responding to Norman and what he said. And so what I want to do, because I've been forgetting to do this on my episodes, is actually bring in music recommendations in light of this conversation. Because what I found interesting and very creative, what people have been doing is releasing or announcing the release of music, whether it's new or things that's relatively new for them. But they do it by putting the clip of Norman saying the gospel is stale, is dead, nobody wants it. And then it's like, boom, let me give you something that is purely gospel, where I'm singing loud, I'm singing strong, I'm doing all these runs or whatever it is. So I wanted to just go over two songs that I came across this week that I really enjoyed that use Norman as an intro to their music. So the first person up is Maranda Curtis, who I enjoy her music. Her song To Him Who Sits on the Throne, or maybe I'm not got the title right, but there's like 3 different songs. It was an EP or a single that was released, but it was really 3 different songs that flowed into each other. That's not what I'm talking about today, but you definitely want to listen to that and get your whole life. You just want to flow in the spirit. It's just a powerful song. But what she did last week, and why I want to bring up here, is she posted a video with some of the gospel greats, like Rance Allen, Mahalia Jackson, in a montage, and then it went right into her song "Bless His Name." And so I would recommend "Bless His Name," "Bless Your Name," rather. I also want to read what she put in her caption because I think this is so good and powerful. Again, speaking to this conversation, she starts by saying, "Gospel music is alive, full stop, exclamation point," right? Today, I'm choosing to celebrate the rich and impactful legacy of gospel music. To trace the lineage of gospel music is to trace the history and culture of a people who have survived, overcome, and thrived, always leaning on and trusting in a God who has never left them. We have songs of the nature of God, songs of freedom, songs of deliverance, songs of lament, and songs of joy. These songs are our melting pot of expression. I love that. They birth awareness of who our Savior is, healing, reflection, reconciliation, renewal, comfort, celebration, and salvation. We have been told, and this is a straight critique, we have been told that we are too loud, too emotional, that we sing too hard, and that our genre is dead. And we were told just last week or the week before. It is interesting that a dead genre is still the most borrowed from. Come on, somebody. From church soloists to church choirs to quartets to praise and worship, and the list goes on. Gospel music is very much alive because we sing of a Savior who is alive. Don't be distracted, she says, and educate yourself. We perish for lack of knowledge. Always remember Jesus. And as Andre Crouch implores us, let us never be ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And she signed that. I love that. And I love the song, Bless Your Name, where she is singing hard and she is singing with emotions and she is doing all the things that we love in gospel music. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to go and check that out. Check out her whole album because it's amazing. She's great. She's a great vocalist and she's a great worship leader. She really just does a great job of ushering in the presence of God. Fred Hammond has released new music this week, and he's released a song called Love Never Fails with a choir. And he wrote in his caption to that, he says, "If I tried, I couldn't pay for this kind of timing. Don't worry, family. Uncle Fred loves choir music, and this song, Love Never Fails, really harkens to that. And it sounds just like your classic Fred Hammond, like it's going to become a bop. And so I encourage you to listen to that, to check that out, because it's going to be good, especially if you want to support choir music, because people saying that it's dead, but we all know that it's very much alive. We are not allowing ourselves to be erased because we can't be erased. As Miranda Curtis said, people are actually borrowing from us. So we're important. Don't let people get inside your head and think that you have no power. All right, thank you so much for joining me for the church, the court, and the culture. This has been a blast, and I know I say this all the time and even after every segment, but please leave me a comment. I would love to know your thoughts about things, and I would also love to know maybe if there's a topic you think I should cover. Wherever you can drop it. Like I said, I'm at Puluki's World on social media, or you can leave me a comment in the Substack. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Substack, or wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, you all be safe, be blessed, peace.